Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, now I'm going to continue on with my series of My World of Astrology. And this is a pretty fantastic story. And really, when I look back at my life, I really can't believe some of the things that I went through and what my experiences were all about. But I think you'll be very interested in this one because it deals with healing. And basically, that is what I believe we're all here to do, heal our lives, heal why we're here. So continuing on, I want to go with the story that happened, well, it was 1984, and I went to an astrology conference. I remember it was I think it was an ESAR conference, and it was in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And I was talking to this group of astrologers who claimed that they knew a healer that healed the incurable. And, you know, you hear all that and you think, yeah, right, who can really do that? It's usually all a bunch of hype and illusion. But, you know, I believe in miracles. I do. I've seen miracles. So with that, I was always looking for ways to heal, and I always wanted to help my parents. And I was very close to them, as you know. I mean, they helped me in so many ways. But so I took note of this healer that I heard that was in the Philippines, and her name was Sister Josephina. So it was 1984, and I was set to go. I was going to experience this because from what I heard about this woman, she was the real deal and cured the incurable, cancers and all sorts of things of that nature. But it was quite a trek, and don't forget, back in those days, there was no cell phones. There was really no internet either. That really didn't start till after those days. So I had to take it upon faith that if we flew to the Philippines, we would find this healer. And so I took explicit notes, and we arranged for my parents and I to go to the Philippines. So upon this, here was the plan. We were to fly into Manila, and we would go to Quezon City, which was about 30 miles outside of Manila. And there we would stay at the Sulu Hotel. But there in the Sulu Hotel, go to the coffee shop and ask for Josephine, or I think her name was Josephina as well. So went to the coffee shop. I mean, we flew in, took my parents. And by the way, my parents had problems with, my mother had clogged arteries and my dad had severe arthritis. So we were looking for a cure for them. So we go to this hotel across the world, and sure enough, in the coffee shop, Josephine was there. So we were told that Josephine would know how we could connect to Sister Josephina, who was the healer. And so what we did was went there, and she said, yes, I can arrange for you to go see just Sister Josephina. So what she did, she says, tomorrow I'll have my son meet you here, and he will take you to see Sister Josephina. So, believe it or not, went across the world, trusted that we'd find this woman in the coffee shop, and we did, and her son appeared the next day. Well, we got in his Jeep, and let me just say, this was quite a drive because we didn't know where we were going or what to expect. And in this Jeep, I'm glad it was a four-wheel drive because we were driving with no roads in the jungles in the Philippines. And And oh my God, if we weren't sick before that ride, we were definitely feeling nauseous after that ride. I mean, our heads were bouncing on the ceilings the whole way there. And finally, it was quite a drive. Finally, in the middle of the jungle, we came upon this little dirt house, like stucco. And this house was like a little church. Had no floors, dirt floors, just this church. The windows were just openings. They were no glass, nothing. There was no electricity, of course no telephones, and just these dirt floors. And when you walked in, there were people from all over the world. There weren't that many, though. There was probably like about 10, 15 people, but they were from different countries all over the world. And there was Sister Josephina. And there was like a table that you would lay on and she would work on you. Well, I didn't know what to expect or anything. All I knew is that she was called a psychic surgeon. And there was this beautiful woman she was dressed as a nun in all white, and she was from, I think, the Netherlands or from Scandinavia, but she assisted Sister Josephina in the healings. So we waited our turn and we saw the people going up on the table and being worked on. And by the way, Sister Josephina did not take any money or fees. She took only donations for her work. And so when it comes our turn, my mother has this long list of all the problems that she has, going to the doctor. I need this fixed, that fixed. This is what's wrong. That's what's wrong. So Sister Josephina, being as sweet as she was, she just nodded and patiently listened to my mother, not realizing that this woman already knew what was wrong. She had a sixth sense. She was very spiritual and very, very saintly, if I could say that. And there was this big draped sort of like banner hanging behind her that said, "God does the work." And Sister Josephina sat us down and explained to us what was going to happen after she listened to the long list of my mother's ailments. She said, "Now imagine the skin being like the surface in a bucket of water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach my hand in through the surface of the water and pull the diseased tissues out. And the water will go right back to where it was as I remove my hand from the surface of the skin, like the surface of the water." And I'm like, well, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I was like, okay. And she allowed me to stand by her side and watch the psychic surgery that she was about to do. And it was just unbelievable. And she even allowed me to take pictures. And I photographed the whole thing. It was astounding. And when my mother was laying there, when she reached her hand into her neck, I could actually see the tissue inside where the opening was of her neck. And no, I'm not kidding you, I almost passed out. I know I had to become white as a sheet because I'm thinking, how in the world is that going to heal back up? Is she going to die on the table? There's no way. I didn't understand how this was possible. But she went in and I saw inside the neck and she pulled out this like string of black beads and tossed it in the bucket of water. And there was blood, a lot of blood, and she wiped it away. The nurse did. And there was nothing, no scar, nothing. Then she proceeded to go throughout my mother's whole body. And my mother's sitting there going, telling Sister Josephina, you are miraculous. And she says, no, God is miraculous. So then she finishes doing my mother's entire body scan and pulling things out, tossing it in the bucket, wiping the blood away. And then it's my father's turn. My father's legs were actually purple from lack of circulation from the arthritis. Worked on his legs, pulling strings out, tossing it in the bucket, and proceeded to cover his whole body. I'm standing there and I'm thinking, does it hurt? What is it going to be like for me? So then it's my turn. I lay on the table and she starts on my, and I don't know what's wrong with me. You know, I was young and healthy, but I just said, just give me a scan. Whatever you see is wrong, I'll listen. And she proceeded to work on me. One thing I remember she did tell me is I needed to drink more water. So, you know, of course I took that to heart. And she started working on my stomach. And she started smiling, real big smile. And then she asked me, she says, are you married? I said, yes. She says, do you have any children? I said, no. And then she proceeded to smile, this big sweet smile. And I thought, am I pregnant or something? Why is she acting like that? That was so weird. And so then she finished with me. Didn't hurt. It just, you feel, you know, tugging and pulling and pressing on the body. And then after we finished, she gave us explicit instructions on what to do. And it was, we must rest, we must sleep, but a list of things: we could not eat red meat, we couldn't eat any meats, just vegetables and fruits, and no alcohol, needless to say, no sex, like that was a problem, and just all these different things that I guess changes the vibrational energy in your body. So we were to rest and take it easy. And we always wanted to go to, and you know, this is really interesting too. My dad was in World War II, and he actually spent his years in the service in the Philippines. And it was interesting because she actually told my father when she was working on him that he would even return again to the Philippines after this visit, because I guess we were talking about when he was there during the war. And so my dad, when he was there in the Philippines before, he had oh my gosh, he got really, really sick. And he had appendicitis and he almost died. They sent him back from the war because of this. But he remembers that they sent him up to Baguio, which is in the mountains of the Philippines, to rest, because otherwise, with all the infection, with the appendicitis, he could have died because of the heat. And they sent him to the mountains in Baguio where it was cooler. So we were set on going to Baguio to rest and sort of like finish our vacation in the Philippines. And I'll never forget, we were driven there and we went to this beautiful hotel. I think back then it was a Hilton or something like that, but it was up in Baguio. And we were so tired. And we checked in and went to our room and immediately went to sleep. This was the weirdest, most miraculous part of everything. We slept for almost 24 hours, the three of us. And when we woke up, oh, I forgot to tell you. Well, let me continue with this. When we woke up, the three of us had a very vivid dream of where we were. And it was like on the other side, in another dimension. It was. And the three of us had the same exact dream, and we were there on the other side talking to each other. And when we woke up, we shared our dream, and it was real. We were all three there. So maybe it really wasn't a dream, but we went outside of our bodies and we connected on the other side, and we all three shared the experience. It happened identically to the three of us. This was an altercation of who and where we were. We were outside of our bodies. Our bodies were being healed. But here was one of the requirements that Sister Josephina said. Amongst all the things we weren't supposed to eat or do, we couldn't take a bath for 3 days. Let me tell you what it feels like in the jungle in the Philippines, and not being able to take a bath for 3 days. That was the most miserable part of the whole trip, if I could say. We had to do like sponge bath and things like that. And that was the hardest part. But that dream and being outside of our body and being out of this world for 24 hours together was something that you can't even imagine. Talk about miraculous. Talk about things that are beyond belief. So then after that, coming back from the Philippines, my father's legs were bright red, from purple to bright red. My mother and father felt like being reborn, and I felt good too. And so we get back to the U.S. My mother goes and has her arteries all checked out. They were completely clear. My father's legs were, all the circulation was back with no arthritis. He said he felt like dancing. And for me, come to find out, I was 2 weeks pregnant when I was on that trip and had no idea. Isn't that astounding? She sensed and knew that baby, that child was there. What a miraculous trip that was. What an experience. I cannot even tell you about that miraculous, seeing the world through the spiritual realm that we did through just Sister Josephina. So years later, one thing that Sister Josephina warned my parents of explicitly was, if you don't change what habits caused these health issues, they will return. And of course, my mother being who she was, my mother was the most stubborn, oh my God, woman in the world. She was going to do things her way, and no ifs, ands, or buts. She didn't change a thing, nor did my father. So years later, the arteries became clogged again, the arthritis returned again. So they were going to go back to the Philippines because this was like their magic bullet. You know, do whatever you want, live the life however you want, but then just go get a checkup and get cleaned out, right? Doesn't work that way. What we discovered, and this was during the time that the Marcoses, Imelda Marcos, and I can't remember her husband who was president of the Philippines, they were in terrible wars during that time in the 80s. And believe it or not, Sister Josephina was murdered. So there goes that ticket to healing where you don't have to do any work, right? Well, my parents made it a point to go back anyway because there were other psychic surgeons that existed in the Philippines. So they proceeded to go back. My older sister took them, and they were worked on. They didn't have the same effect. And come to find out, there were a lot of phonies, and a lot of people believed that the psychic surgeons of the Philippines were a bunch of quacks and fakes. There were a lot of quacks and fakes, and that was especially what they experienced when they went back this time while Sister Josephina was gone. And And come to find out, what these psychic surgeons would do to emulate what Sister Josephina authentically did was they would squeeze like chicken livers and red squeeze and act like they were pulling the stuff out and throwing it into the buckets, but there was no healing. It wasn't real. And there was even, and this was a huge controversy years later, a healer down in Brazil that healed a lot of people. And yes, some people were healed. And my goodness, that was John of God. Oh my God, if you look that up, whew, that was a nightmare. And as a matter of fact, my parents even years later went to go see John of God in Brazil. No healing. Nothing worked. And so what I want to close with this is that I had the most divine experience with someone that was a true spiritual healer. She was a saint on planet Earth. I actually had the blessing and privilege to meet with Sister Josephina while she was here on Earth. And no one else has ever been able to do what I experienced with her. But what we do need to take away from this is we have to do the work. We can't expect someone to heal us and take it away. Emotionally, a lot of disease is brought on by our bad habits, our bad thinking, our childhood experiences that we don't let go of, all the emotional issues that cause so much of the disease in the world. We've got to change. We can't expect some spiritual soul to take it all away unless we change ourselves. And that's the biggest lesson I want you to take away from this. But if I wasn't hooked up with all these spiritual people from my astrology conferences, I could have never learned and experienced the miracle of Sister Josephina in the Philippines. That almost seems like a dream in my life, but it truly happened. I have so many of these experiences. When you seek, you find. So that is my story of healing and my experiences within the Philippines. What an incredible experience. Just remember, there are things that are miraculous and beyond this world. In this world. So with that, I think I'll close. Remember, if you want to learn more about me, go to my website, galacticcenter.org. Sign up for my free newsletter and also find out about my Patreon club, because you can be part of talking with me about all of this every single week with Patreon. That's all on galacticcenter.org. Don't forget about my Galactic Planner. That is something that if you want your personal chart done and you want to be guided by the stars every day of your life, check it out. You will love it. Go to galacticplanner.com. And remember, I teach astrology too. If you want to learn from me and become my student, go to my university website, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.